Wonderful. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. It's very hot here, so I hope you're not sweating too much, and I hope that you've had a wonderful week. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with John and Ian. I'm going to, first of all, ask you guys just to say a couple of words about what you've seen this week.
So this week for me has all been about Future Lines, which is AKQA's global search for the next generation of talent. So we announced the winners this week on stage on Wednesday in front of a packed-out Palais, which is brilliant. We have the winners with us, and yeah, it's been a fantastic week of celebrating the people who are going to be influencing this industry, probably quite imminently, actually, which is
Excellent.
good. Yeah.
And a favourite bit of work, if you can pick one, or anything that's out that you loved without picking favourites.
So the biased opinion from AKQA is the Usher "Don't Look Away" interactive music video, which I think is a pretty remarkable piece of work, and just the thing that everyone's talking about, which is McWhopper, just because of the how prolific it's gone. So yeah, I'm quite impressed by that.
Absolutely. How about you, John?
I've seen barrels of rosé. I've seen a few people who'd like to move from certain companies to certain other companies. I won't go into any further detail on that. And I too am quite keen on the McWhopper idea, particularly as an hour or so ago, a little bit more, we were in the Palais. I think we were there for all of the holding company chief executives coming together on behalf of the Sustainable Development Goals, and Ban Ki-moon was there. And this idea of common ground is gaining a lot of traction, hopefully in our industry and beyond, of people nominally competitive getting together for the greater good. And you know, the more we see of that, the better. So I think the McWhopper thing captures that very well.
Excellent. And one of the things you were talking just a moment ago about the Future Lines project itself. So maybe it would be fantastic if you could say a couple of words about kind of how you see that fitting into the industry at large.
Sure. So Future Lines is now in its 11th year, and over the past 11 years, we've awarded just over 70 Future Lines to amazing young talent from all different disciplines around the world. This year, we had almost 2,000 entries from 69 countries. So it makes it the biggest student competition in the creative industry, which is fantastic. And each year, so the brief has broadly remained the same for 11 years, which is to connect an audience to a brand in a way that wasn't possible 3 years ago. And the reason we set that brief, in a way, it's kind of a trick, because what we're looking for, and the important bit, is the not possible 3 years ago.
Sure.
And we set that because the criteria that we judge is not that the students needlessly follow trends or apply technology just because they can, but rather apply it in a way that's appropriate for a brand and in a way that understands the behavior of that audience, so it's done in a meaningful way. And we can learn a hell of a lot from these students in terms of their diversity of thinking, but also understanding the audience in an entirely new way. So it's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. I was blown away by a lot of the work. So it's probably a good moment. We've got our winners here from the Future Lines. So let's give them a huge round of applause. And I completely agree with Ian. I think some of the insights that you guys were tapping into and understanding how people are going to be using that experience, that branded experience, and bringing that to life using a lot of new technologies, often using social media, going mobile first. I thought they'd really understood a lot about how people are actually interacting with brands and how to add value to people. So huge congratulations to all of you. Yeah. A couple of the themes that I was interested in the work as well. Providing utility really jumped out at me. Yeah. I thought, a lot of them were not trying to just kind of shove a message at people in a push way, but offering tangible and practical usefulness to people.
Yeah, that's right. So there's two things that can happen really with kind of aggressive moves from brands into the digital world, and we can intrude on people's lives almost to the point where it's irrecoverable, or if we understand them and the circumstances that they're in, the world they're in, we can contribute or yield enduring success. And there's this thing which I've spoken a lot about this week on various events and things, which is the word engagement, which is sadly, although it's kind of rife in our industry and it's one of the most popular terms, it's actually one of the most relevant, but it's completely misrepresented. Because what we think of engagement often is this massive explosion or massive declaration from a brand which lasts 30 seconds and then it vanishes away. And that's not how we create engagement. Engagement is the accumulation of thousands of small decisions to interact with a brand, and you can only do that if you have this godlike understanding of the world that they're in, and understanding how we can help them make informed decisions. And with that comes, you have to do that with data and analysis and measurement of things, but you can also use it to deceive people, which is obviously short-sighted for obvious reasons. So the people who understand that and use it with meaning can create real success for a brand.
Sure. Here we are with Google and with YouTube. So I think it's useful to have a quick word about the role of technology and the changing role of technology. What do you think? What are your feelings sitting in the creative industry, in creative agencies? How do you see that opening up new possibilities for you in the future?
I think it's a cart before the horse kind of an argument for me. I was asked in a panel the other day, would you rather have a very tech-literate, data-driven person who's claims to be very creative, or would you like a very, very creative person who's claims to be technically literate? And it is, in this day and age, I said it, that's like asking, do you want a black and white dog or a white and black dog? For me, I'll always go towards the creative side of things. I'll always think, unless you've got a core idea, to Ian's point, you can get people to engage in a flash in the pan kind of a way with something for a moment or a day or two, and then it's gone. Much like some years ago, and some of you are probably too young to even remember that, people throwing whatever brand of mint it was into Coke bottles and making great big explosions to the great detriment of both the mint and the Coke. And then we all got bored with that, and nothing much lasted. So I do think if we can, stick to a core discipline, which is, it's when I work with AKQA, what's fantastic is they don't sit there and say, have you seen this latest piece of tech or this new trend that's coming? We discuss the idea. I've just done a pitch with them. I won't go into that just now, but it's what my career's always been about. I sat there with the AKQA guys and we discussed ideas. Now, when we've got the core idea and we think we can make it stick, then we can start talking about, all of the new technologies and the periscope and what have you, and delivering that idea as many touch points to the relevant people as we can. But you still need to have an idea.
Yeah, I think one of the trouble is these two opposing forces with technology and data and all of these things that are occupying all our seminars this year. And the thing about the risk with all of this measurement and data and intelligent collection and interpretation of it is that we run the risk of trying to force certainty on creativity, which in the majority of cases is quite misguided, because what we ask of creative people, regardless of discipline, is that they're willing to make these illogical leaps of wit and thought and imagination, and they do that in a way to catch us off guard. And if we police creative thought with essentially precedent or etiquette or logic, what we end up with is kind of this weird echo chamber and repetition, and very quickly everything will become very mediocre. So that's the risk, and that's the dystopian view of technology and its impacts on creativity. But actually, it's this balance of those two universes that can.
But the other thing to say, and it's comes straight out of that, is if you get data, it's a start point. Data just means information. That's a great start point. There can be, that phrase, too much information. You can be drowning in data. You need to get to the really, really key thing from which you can derive an insight. And I'm thinking, somebody was asking me, how to get the creative departments to engage more with data? And how you do it is you say, look at this fantastic piece of work. And if everybody says, yeah, wow, that's amazing. And you say, well, that wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for this nugget of information we got through data. Then the creatives will start thinking, I really need to get more into this data thing because I need some of those nuggets. There's a fantastic campaign just at the moment for Pantene shampoo, and it's called Dad Do's. I don't know if anybody's seen it. And they've got famous American iconic sports stars. The data says girls do better in life in general if they spend quality time with their dads. Now that's data, right? That interesting or otherwise. But Pantene of all things, the shampoo, took that data and turned it into advertising stroke content, those two terms are interchangeable these days, of, it's fantastic stuff where you see the big sports star and his 9 or 10-year-old daughter, and he's trying to do her hair in some style that she'll like, and the girl's complaining, and it's all very good fun and stuff. But it's going to win big, whether it's this year or next. It's a very, very good campaign, and it wouldn't exist if we weren't in a world where we can grab that kind of information and insight through data. So that's how you get creatives to engage with data.
Cool. One of the interesting points I think that I've been hearing, I've just spent a week asking all of the people I've been running into, so what do you think is going to be the creative organization of the future? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities for you? And I've heard a bunch of interesting answers, often talking about fluidity, about effectiveness, about offering kind of rebooting the value proposition. Somebody put it to me. How do you guys think, in terms of key opportunities versus challenges?
So the thing that I've heard most, I think this week in particular, is actually fascinating because I was here 5 years ago. I was actually here for MIPCOM, which is the broadcasting and more like the publishing event at Cannes. And we were having these exact conversations then as we're having now. It's just now that they've permeated into the ad industry. And that conversation is basically, should brands and agencies partner up and create their own IP, which they then sell to their audiences, rather than shout at them? And it absolutely is possible to work. We can look at like the Hollywood industry and we can say that's exactly what they do. I think what most people haven't yet realized is that effectively will move brands and agencies into the hits business, which is a different thing entirely. So if you look at a Hollywood studio, they might have 20 things on their slate for the year. They'll have 3 tent poles, and those 3 things will prop up the losses and the ones that break even. Now, it absolutely works, and it's the same in venture capital because about 90% of the return from investment comes from 10% of their investment. So it's entirely possible, but it's a very different mindset to have. And with it is a hell of a lot more of risk. Because when you move into a publishing business or a hits business, there's absolutely or rarely ever anything to determine whether or not it's going to be successful. And 5 years ago, before I joined AKQA, myself and Ajaz Ahmed, who's the CEO of AKQA, we had a tech startup, which was effectively a publishing company, and we made all the apps with Jamie Oliver, and it was the same thing. We had a joint venture with a brand, in this case Jamie Oliver. We made the investment, we took the risk, and we sold direct to consumers. And with that is there's so many complications and reasons for it to go wrong. For example, the first app that we released was a one-off payment, and then immediately we had people saying, where's my other content? Where's my new content? Which isn't a sustainable model. Yep. When we released the iPad version, we introduced in-app purchases, which tanked, and we made absolutely no money. And overnight, we moved it to subscription, and we tripled our revenue. But point me in the direction of a massive incumbent agency and brand who can act that quickly with that much agility to try and solve a problem. I'll be quite amazed. So in order to do that, if that's the goal, this IP, this joint venture, then there's a hell of a learning curve, I think, on its way.
Sure, and you mentioned speed there as one of the key ingredients, kind of the ability to move very fast. So these guys were given a brief. I'm not sure exactly how much time you had to work on it, but I know it's a very, very fast. Yeah, they're all nodding, going.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
Yeah, so that's pretty fast. How do you guys, John, kind of deal with that issue of increasing reactivity and the speed of working? Are you sticking kind of with the ways that you have been used to?
No. When I first started back in the late 19th century, people had funny notions of if it's a TV ad, you get 6 weeks. If it's a press ad, you get 4 weeks. And I never subscribed to that because I haven't got, I don't have the attention span to spend 4 weeks thinking about packet soup. I'm likely to not have the idea or not and move on. And I think that's stood me in good stead, and I think that's how the world is now. But to the other point, brands and the notion of hits makes you think, does Unilever and Procter and people like that now need to understand that they need to create an anti-dandruff shampoo for 2017, knowing that it will be obsolete by 2018, and then come up with another one? Or can they, can Pantene, which has been around forever, continue to have its own hits through the example I mentioned a moment ago, and contain and remain salient for people, as a long-term brand. I would rather that were the case, because I don't think the other model is sustainable for ourselves or for P&G or for you or everybody else. So I do think, I'm sorry to be a bore on this, but I'm always going to defer back to, you need a core idea, and these days the bigger the better, so that you can capture people at each and every touch point and still have something relevant to say, but what it is that you say still subscribes to and amplifies the initial big idea that you had for the brand in the first place. That, I don't think, is going away anytime soon. So if you can do it in a week or do it in 6 weeks, as long as you can do it, you've got a future.
Cool. And you mentioned the role of the brand partners in there, kind of the brands and how they're working and how they're set up and structured.
Yeah.
Talking about the agency world and the creative industry, if you like, what would be your key kind of plea to brands about how you think they perhaps need to evolve, or a new behavior that they would have to learn?
It's less about new behaviors. It's more about, if I think about some of the most innovative work that comes out of AKQA, it's when there's been a champion at the other end. So someone within the brand to carry it through and sell it in. And we've been talking about this all week, which is often, the idea is actually, not always, most of the time, the easiest part of the whole process. It's having the resilience to sell it in and the resilience to make it survive and not be this pale comparison of what it could have been at the beginning. And you only get that when you get a champion in the brand, and that tends to come from long-term relationships. So if brands continually have these one-night stands with agencies, I think that's the first risky thing. And then the other thing is they just need guts. And they need bravery, and it comes back to the idea of policing creativity. If our sole mission in this industry is to make sure the investments we put out in the world all win, then we're not going to get anywhere. But if instead we take the approach where the creativity we put out into the world, the products and services we put out, have the possibility of success, then I think we'll make these radical leaps of innovation rather than this kind of very incremental, bizarre world in this feedback loop that we can be in this industry sometimes. And
it's interesting to see the sorts of hires that different businesses are making these days. So agencies, you talk about, Martin Sorrell refers to WPP's Big Four, the Grey, JWT, etc., as being the legacy agencies. Well, I suppose it's true they've been around for a while, but they're not going away anytime soon, because it's incumbent on them to keep up. And a lot of people are talking about different titles now within agencies, the chief technology officer, or the people whose role it is to keep everybody mindful of the next development. And I think, as Ian was saying, don't be slavish to it. Be cognizant of it. Don't try and sell Complan to the elderly through Instagram. You'd be wasting your time. But do be aware of the developments. And similarly, you're finding big brand organisations hiring creative people, because it does take bravery. The best work doesn't happen by accident. It happens because there's a committed creative agency with an equally committed client, and the two of them come together to make something like Dove over the years, doing fantastic work because Unilever wanted it to work, and Procter and Old Spice, that sort of stuff is difficult to buy and difficult to believe in and difficult to make happen. But when it does, the rewards are exponential. So it does take bravery, and I'd like to see more big corporations hiring more creative people to help them be a bit braver.
Yeah, and this is actually why Future Lions is actually so important, because what we get with this incredibly young set of talent and these 5 winning teams that we presented on Wednesday is that they just don't have that etiquette, and they don't have those set ways and these set processes that we are so often completely unaware of. So my favourite story that I keep banging on about this week, but it's so simple and a brilliant illustration of the problem, which is one of the teams for a winning idea for IKEA, they had this really quite remarkable voiceover for their video. And I had lunch with them, and I said, so come on, how did you do this video? Because the Future Lions winners, everyone thinks AKQA produces their films, we don't. Everyone thinks they have consultation from all the brands they represent, they don't. It's all off their own back. And some of these teams are teams of 2, 3, or 4, maximum 5. And they had this amazing voiceover, and I just said, so how did you do this? Did your school invest significantly? And they said, no, we just found this site online where you can pay $10 and someone will do it for you and give you 2 revisions. And I thought, like, the amount of hours and days and thousands of pounds I've spent in recording studios doing voiceovers and not got anywhere near the same result. So, and that's a very silly explanation, like an illustration, but it's just brilliant because that is just repeated over and over again, because they don't have all these processes, they don't have all these set ways of doing things. And if they achieve that just with a voiceover, imagine what they can do with this unlimited technology.
The Uber of voiceovers.
Yeah, exactly.
Your voiceover will be with you in 10 minutes.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
You mentioned it just a couple of seconds ago, kind of on the client side, the importance of having kind of a good client, as it were, and you just mentioned bravery, which is language I love as well. We talk about it in our team as kind of having a warrior on our side. So we're kind of, is the client a warrior? We ask each other, and I think that's really great. One, if I may give any kind of tip to our future lions who are starting in their careers, I think the importance of kind of identifying individual warrior clients who are ambitious and great and talented and have got that bravery to champion big ideas. That's gold. If you haven't got that, life's really difficult. So when you work with a client like that, follow their careers and follow them, and you'll probably end up working with them as they evolve and grow as well. That's certainly been the case with me.
And to turn that into a slogan, there are too many warriors and not enough warriors.
Absolutely.
That's why big books.
It's all about creativity. There you go. No data needed
Thank you.
that one.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to pick your brains on. So I work in a very wide region across EMEA. We do work in London and in Paris and in Dubai and all across the region. And it strikes me that the creative agency setup in all of those places is not identical. You're sitting in London where you've got these fantastically sophisticated, capable agencies with a lot of capabilities and expertise there at your disposal. Sometimes that's not always the case. If I look over in Dubai and that region, the technology is there, and they've got some of the biggest figures on how people are using technology, and everyone's got 2.5 mobile phones in their pocket, etc. So it feels like the people are ready and the technology is ready, and sometimes you get a sense that creatively the level isn't perhaps as good as we would hope. How do you see that? Do you see different opportunities or people coming at different speeds according to the regions?
I think, without doubt, that's very evident. I think. So my thought on that is that we should, as an industry, probably the biggest thing we lack, because of all this circulation and kind of speed of technology and things, is one thing we probably miss more than anything else is empathy, which is really what's the actual behavior pattern of the people in that territory. So rather than focus on the technology and how we can serve it and what's the wacky idea we can do with that piece of technology, it's generally what is the unchanging human nature of that audience. And there's certain things. So, for example, in Asia, their perception of value with digital products and digital content is far easier to communicate to than it is in the US and Europe. So in the UK especially, digital value to us is still very much, we haven't quite got it. And it's why when the app industry was introduced, everyone tried making all these new content streams, and then it vanished almost overnight in the grand scheme of things, and it became a race to the bottom. And that wasn't the case in Asia, and it's still not now. So I think I'd much rather favour focusing purely on the enduring, the complexity of humanity in that area, rather than where's the creativity missing? Because I think that one follows the other. Yeah.
Sure.
If I could, blow a trumpet here for AKQA, why I think AKQA has been so successful is precisely Ian's point. There's almost a missing generation now, because 10 or 15 years ago, when people will want to refer to the digital revolution, I guess there was a bit of a panic, and people realised that they didn't quite get all this newfangled internet type stuff, and so they went out and hired pretty well anyone who could say the word binary was suddenly a senior executive, and that's okay. But then 10 or 15 years later, around the world, you find you're looking for the guy or the girl to step up to be the executive creative director, who themselves has got a back catalogue of great ideas and great creativity that everybody would respect and want to work for. And they're a bit thin on the ground at the minute. Yeah. Now, AKQA is first and foremost a creative powerhouse. It happens to do it in, new media and uses technology better than anybody else. But fundamentally, it's a creative agency. What I'm finding is, as I say, the difficulty, what the advantage of that, or the opportunity for you young lions, is get yourself into an agency. You'll be the executive creative director within about 18 months.
Cool. I wanted to open it up actually to our future executive creative directors who are sitting there. And I wanted to ask some of you, I think we've got some mics around for some questions, or for you guys to chip in, because we've been talking a lot. But what would be your biggest kind of ask, if you like, for the future organizations that you're going to be building and contributing to and hopefully leading one day? Do you have any kind of top-line thoughts about what's the most important thing for you guys?
Yeah, I think we're kind of... everyone would pitch in for... We're looking for good mentoring right now. And it's... Ian has said this over and over again. It's all about starting something, and the Future Lions really feel like a start of something new. So even though this is a huge win, you're still very humble for what you're getting into. And we'll see what comes next. I don't know, do you have anything to pitch in on that?
I also think it's really important to just come to a company where you can work over the disciplines. So you learn from different people, and you just get to a company where you really can learn as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really important point, because this actually comes back to your point about Asia actually as well, in the UK and Europe. So over the past, because I spend a lot of time in schools in London and around like Bournemouth and some of our top creative schools in the UK, and over the past 7 years there's been a very, very noticeable shift from going from specialism to a broad display of their creativity. So the kind of the old model of education was specialize in one thing, become a master of that, and then you'll be successful. And that probably worked in the 50s, and it's fine. But now that's not what the world demands of these people. What brands and the world demands of them is they're first and foremost economic in their application of creativity. So they can write, they can design, they have a good understanding of film, visual effects, animation. It goes on, which is very, very hard. That's a tall order. But we see it increasingly in the UK and Europe that schools are actually teaching multidisciplinary courses, which I was lucky enough to be on in my uni. And then the second I graduated, it vanished because it was very difficult to recruit people for it. So we're seeing it in Europe and the UK, which gives me complete hope, actually, for the industry. And I think maybe Asia, it's maybe still slightly, there's a skew towards specialism. But that will change, and it will change. And it's this broad... I think the people who are unwilling to explore their creative breadth are the ones that will lose relevance probably quicker than the others.
Yeah, Sean, we're certainly seeing a whole bunch of hybrid profiles coming in, people who can code as well as art direct and so on. I think that's an absolutely magic combination when you can bring kind of some of the art with some of the engineering type skill sets. Absolutely. Are there any other opening up to the audience? Anyone's got any burning questions for our panel?
Hi. I've got two, actually, if that's all right. First one is, so we've been talking about, how it's kind of 10% investments where the success comes from, and, where the return comes from. So the first question is, should we kind of think or encourage brands to think more of, rather than kind of going for a clear ROI, just sort of investing more in creativity, and then with the hope that just like with the startup model, there will be, 10, maybe even 1% that yields really high returns, and the rest, will fail. So that's first one. And the second one, again, there was a lot of talk on authenticity and, being useful, doing something good. And with that, I've been thinking, should we try and communicate the mission of the brand somehow, if there is one? Mm-hmm. So kind of, do you think this is important? Do you think we can do it? And do you think we can sort of convince brands to not just do something cool and kind of grab their attention, but more pass their message on why they're doing it? Why do they exist? Why does Unilever exist?
Yeah.
Anybody can do shampoo or...
What's that panel?
I can't make shampoo. I'll give you my 20-second version of that, if I think I remember the first one correctly. And the first question was about ROI, is that a goal? And Yes. So the fact is, there's a commercial reality to what we all do. I mean, we're not artists. We're commercial, creative people, which is cool. Like, celebrate that. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause it means we can buy houses. So that's the good thing. But ROI and those, like, the spreadsheet analysis of it should not come first. That, without doubt. So you need to know the commercial needs of what you're doing, of the brief, but you should never police the inception of an idea with rationality, in my opinion. So that's the first thing. So that's the order of the second thing. And then I've forgotten what the second one was already.
It's about brands and their mission, and
Brands
how do
and
we
their
get that
mission.
message out
So
there.
my take on that is, if you don't understand the essence of a brand and why it exists in the world, you'll never be successful. Fact. That's why the winners of this are actually so incredible. Like, credit to all of them, because without any interaction with the brand, they all demonstrate a pretty outstanding understanding of why that brand is in this world. But then my counterpoint to that is, we don't need to do it in a worthy way. Like, we don't need to do it to try and save the world. We can do it in a way, for example, if you take Google's mission, which is to, present the world's information to people in they phrase it better, but it's something along those lines. And if you take that, I mean, that applies to every single thing Google does. So there's no lie in what Google do. If you take even their autonomous car program, that is presenting the world with information. It's all. So you can communicate the essence of a brand without doing it in a way that's worthy, without doing it in a way that's heavy-handed. But if you don't do it, then that's the first hurdle.
Cool.
I think we shouldn't get too carried away with it, but CSR has become increasingly important in the last, probably even in the last decade, a bit longer. And I think social media is hats off, because everyone in the world now expects big corporations. You can't fly anywhere without the aeroplane saying, or the people on the plane saying, we're collecting for digging a well somewhere. And good. And I've had people say to me, you in your industry, it's very cynical, all your pretense of, creating fresh water, says Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Well, what's the harm in that? If Pepsi and Coca-Cola didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. So I'm very happy with that. And governments the world over, this is going to get a bit political, governments the world over are retrenching. They're pulling back. They don't have the spare cash anymore for fantastic social programs and everything we all we wanted to be feather-bedded back in the 70s and 80s and what have you around the world. And brands are moving in. So where, for example, in the UK, it's now very expensive to go to university where it used to be free. There's a very, very big difference between free and very expensive. Now, there are certain organisations who will help you go to university to study certain courses, and they'll pay for your course. The transaction is that you will then work for them. You don't have to work for them forever, but for a period of time. And people, isn't that terrible? That's awful, isn't it? Well, why is it awful? If that didn't happen, that person wouldn't go to university, so it's a good thing. Yeah. So I think the CSR programs that, frankly, the consumer has demanded of large organisations, by and large, is a very, very good thing.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I'm getting the time up signal, so we'll have to wrap it up there. We've heard about big ideas, we've heard about courage, we've heard the young future stars of the industry talking about staying humble, learning, becoming multidisciplinary. I think those are some pretty positive messages to take away if we keep anything in mind. So thank you both very much. Ian, John, thank you, and congratulations to our Future Lion winners. Big hand. Amazing talent and amazing work. So congrats.